Is yesterday's riot the beginning of the public fight back against the coalition cuts?
Yesterday's riot in London, student riot in London, of course. Douglas Murray, is it the beginning of a public fight back?
No, I don't think so. I was quite disturbed to read some of the comments, though, by some of those people who did riot yesterday. There is always a certain number of people who take advantage of perfectly legitimate demonstrations to create havoc and mayhem. There was one actually interviewed on the BBC last night. Such people sort of not only want to cause havoc and damage, they also want to sort of will things to an end. They want there to be confrontation. They want to have their moment in history. Most of these people are sort of middle-class phony revolutionaries, desperate to have their moment of glory. And actually the problem is that what they've done, and what those people who emulate them are doing, is covering over what should be a serious and grown-up debate, and one which I think most students, as well as most people in the country, want to have.
But in the face of the cuts, do you think this example is going to start similar protests over the months ahead at all?
No, I wouldn't at all. I think they'll realise that they've done what they claim to be their cause a huge disservice, and anyone who tried to follow that would be very stupid.
Okay, please.
Are Ian Duncan Smith's welfare reforms an attack on welfare dependents, or a necessary step to reduce a culture of worklessness?
So are the reforms announced by Ian Duncan Smith today an attack on welfare dependents, or a necessary step to reduce the culture of worklessness? Caroline Flint.
I think welfare reform is necessary. We took a number of actions in government, some of which the present government is continuing with. And I actually think some of the ideas about a universal credit, which might help to simplify the benefit system, isn't a bad idea either, but we've got to look at the detail. But what I do think is important is when you are saying to people about finding work, there has to be work there. And we're going to see potentially something like 1.6 million jobs in both the public and private sector go over the next year or two. So I think it's absolutely right that where people are out of work, you do what you can to support them into work, and if there's positive opportunities available and they don't take it, I think sanctions should apply. But you've got to have the work there.
But what Ian Duncan Smith said was that under Labour, with boom years, there were still lots of people who weren't doing work, and people had to come in from abroad to fill the jobs.
Well, actually, when we left government, we actually had more, if you like, British-born people in work than ever before. It had gone up by 1 million since '97. In all the claimant groups, whether that was those on job seekers allowance or on income support or on incapacity benefit, actually they were all falling numbers. Are there areas we could have done a bit more on? Probably yes, but it's a very difficult system, the benefit system, and it's quite difficult, I think, for all governments to get it right. I think we've made some progress, and I'm pleased to see the government's going to continue with some of our reforms, and we're open to discussing some of theirs. But you have to have work available for people to go into.
Douglas Murray.
Yeah, but I mean, there was a figure that Ian Duncan Smith mentioned today, that in the last 10 years, there were 1.5 million people who are out of work for 9 out of those 10 years. So the figures that Caroline is polishing, as it were, about Labour's record aren't entirely accurate. The last government created a lot of new jobs, apart from anything else, by massively expanding the public sector, and we've all seen where that's got us. They also, of course, during that same period, allowed this culture of welfare dependency to get worse. Now, this is not
true.
This is not a single party issue. The Conservative Party has been guilty of this, as has the Labour Party. But we have to come to some kind of acknowledgement in this country that it is not moral or good to pay people not to work for that long a period of time. You have to encourage people to work. It gives people all sorts of things other than income. It gives them a sense of worth, of nobility, of being able to provide for their loved ones. It is not moral to keep them in the state that so many people have been kept in recent years.
Douglas, it's not true. I'm afraid it's not true that it got worse. Actually, more people through the flexible New Deal, which the government is going to continue with, got work. We have more people, for example, with disabilities and health who got work.
Caroline, it turned out last year that 90% of the new jobs created under New Labour, which your ministers kept on saying were British jobs for British workers and so on, tub-thumping things, actually went to foreign-born workers.
The man in the check shirt.
Yeah, Sheridan spoke about, is it right for an accountant to sweep the streets of London, for example? I'm self-employed. I go from one job, and then for months I don't have another job. So what do? I wait tables, You know, I work in a bar. I do those normal jobs. Yeah, it's not my career, but I'm out there. I think
What's
the
your
problem,
career?
I'm a professional dancer. So, yeah, we'd love the life of feathers and tights and beauty and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, when you have it, yeah, but when you don't, I do these normal jobs. Yeah, they're mundane.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think what it comes down to is British people have become snobs. They don't want to work in checkouts at supermarkets anymore. They don't want to sweep the streets because they would rather not swallow their pride and do these jobs. They'd rather take the money and run.
Okay.
I'm so thrilled that somebody said that.
One at the back there, one in, two in, yeah. No, at the very back.
Surely forcing people into unpaid voluntary work is just individualising the socio-political problems and actually creating discourses of blame, shame and deficiency.
Wow.
That's the sort of sense you only get in a university.
You can answer that.
Discuss.
Discuss, yes.
I actually agree with the gentleman there. I don't have a problem actually with people just doing some work. I think, I think it's part of what you need to do in a work ethic. Of course, you want to try and provide jobs that's suitable for people's qualifications or if they're going to retrain. But I actually think work is good, and work leads to more work. That's the other issue. But what worries me is when you hear about policies, for example, that if someone is unemployed for a year on job seekers allowance, whether they have done everything possible to find a job and it's completely not their fault, there'll be an arbitrary 10% cut in their housing benefit at the end of the year. I don't think that is fair, and I don't think that is supportive of people who actually are making an effort to find work, because actually there's plenty of people who are on benefits who do make an effort to find work, and they need the jobs to go into.
But Caroline, this is only... You talk about this... You talk about this, and a lot of people talk about this as if the Conservative Party just loves cutting people's benefits, loves cutting disabled benefits, loves doing all these things. They're only having to do it because your party ran this country into the economic mess we're in.
That's rubbish. That's rubbish.